We start the next thing. Mr. Fox asked me a really good question. You each have a team sponsor, okay? So sponsorship's quite important. It helps put money into the program, which allows you to do more things and supplement the cost for you guys and all that sort of stuff. So there are a lot of resources available due to sponsorship. So with your team sponsors, they come from a variety of different industries, not necessarily the healthcare industry. And so particularly at the trade display, we'd like you to, give a bit back to the sponsors, proudly sponsored by, put some signage up, that sort of thing. Maybe on your classroom windows and that sort of thing too, so get their names out there so they feel like they're getting a bit of value for money. So in no way does your product have to reflect who you're sponsored by. However, your island nation does. So there's two big aspects in this program. One is your island nation and the other is the environmental concept. So you'll be judged on both of those things. So make sure you do bring some cultural substance to your presentations and your reports and all that sort of thing. And everything you do needs to be environmentally sustainable. Okay, so think about that too. Finally, in years gone by, each team has had a specific area. So teacher mentors are probably more familiar with this. We've had like a dentistry team and a psychology team, and that's all gone. Okay, you can do whatever thing you want within the healthcare industry. All right, cool. Okay, moving along, the computer simulation. The first thing I'd like to stress is the computer simulation is different to what you're doing for the rest of the week. So, how can I explain this? Just because you're the CEO of the company, if you're elected CEO, don't necessarily take a $0 salary to save money because you're happy to. The CEO in the computer simulation wouldn't like that. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the computer simulation. It's designed to give you a realistic scenario of competition between businesses operating within a single market. Okay, your market is made up of the 10 teams, that's it. You're all competing against each other. It will take place over 8 quarters. So for those of you who aren't familiar with financial terminology, a quarter is a 3-month period used by accountants, financial analysts, etc., as a measure of comparison across different parts of the year. In Australia, our financial year runs from the 1st of July to the 30th of June, and quarters are as shown. As each of you have a business based in a different nation, it will be necessary for you to check what fiscal year your country generally operates in. This is to ensure the information you provide in your oral and written reports towards the end of the week are accurate and realistic. Okay, this is about bringing the culture into it. So, regardless of whether your financial year runs a calendar year or July to June, your quarter ones will all line up. But in your presentations, your quarter one will be whatever the quarter one is in the country. Does that make sense? This is where the simulation doesn't quite line up with what we're doing through the week, but it's still a really important part of the program. Okay, my biggest hint. All pay as much attention as you can. This is a complex thing we're going to go through. It's a little bit dry. So if you've got questions, ask them as we go along. It's going to be easier to deal with them on the spot than it is at the end. Okay? However, at the end, it's probably best if the 2 or 3 of you have the best grasp on this, take control of your simulation. Because the more people who... It's great if you all understand it, but if you're all involved in making those decisions, it will take so long to decide what you're going to do, you won't get it in on time and you'll be stuck with what happened last quarter. Okay? Oh, bear in mind too, those of you preparing the company written report and the oral presentation need to have an idea of what's happened. Okay, so if you have some understanding, even if you weren't involved in the decision making, you have some understanding of the numbers so that when you're putting it in those reports, you can explain them. Okay, so there are a lot of assumptions in this computer simulation. It is a computer, it is a simulation, and it has to make assumptions. Regardless of what product your team creates, for the marketing and trade display on your website, TV ads, etc. It's assumed for the purposes that all your products are direct competitors with one another. Therefore, if one team decides to manufacture a toothpick and one a car, they're considered equal by the computer. It doesn't know what you're making, okay? So keep that in mind. The simulation will also assume that all teams are operating in the same market. So even though they all have a different country, the simulation will have all teams competing in the same Australian market. Before making the first decision, you'll be given an established business. So you're actually taking over an existing company. You're all taking over an identical company, okay? Therefore, you need to learn your business in order to succeed in this simulation. We'll discuss the implications of the assumptions further as we go through. Do you all have one of these in front of you? Excellent. You guys will be doing your decisions electronically. This is a printed one which some schools use, but it's good to just put in front of you for now. It has the same information on it, okay? And we're just going to work through it so you can take notes, etc. Alright, so at the top we have Operations 1 section. First thing, projected number to be produced. This is the total number of units you are aiming to manufacture during the quarter. This is a goal. This doesn't mean that your factories will be capable of manufacturing this number. Okay? So what you need to do is you need to do the maths behind it and make sure that your factories are capable of manufacturing your goal number of units. We'll go through how to do that in a sec. Your factories may produce more or less depending on how you organise your output, and other factors which may influence your production include your employees, whether they're working single or double shifts to do overtime, their morale, faulty products, etc. You have your products divided into 3 markets. The 3 markets are the sum of the projected number to be produced. Okay, so as you can see, 6,283.5 and 1,500 add up to 1033.5. That's how your distribution will take place, and it's based on the percentage that these numbers create. Okay, these 3 numbers have to equal the number in the box at the top. So if you produce less, they'll be distributed pro rata. Also, if you produce more units, still distributed pro rata. So, to give you an idea, your home market is, say, Queensland. Your other market is the rest of Australia, and your export market is what's being sent international. All right. So, I should probably point out, no, we'll come back to that. This is the quality of raw materials purchased to manufacture each of the units. Okay, so raw materials, if you were making a pair of jeans, would be the denim, the cotton, the zips, the button, all the pieces that come together to make the product. Okay? You can make a choice whether you use low, medium or high quality products. Depending on what quality of product you use, depends on how much it costs you. So, all of this information is outlined in the manufacturing booklet that you have in front of you, the ABW booklet. But I've put it in this presentation to try and explain it a little clearer, and you can get this off G Drive, okay, if you want to run the numbers again later. So, a low quality product costs you $30 per unit. Cheap, great. The only thing is that because it's low quality, 2% of it can't be used. So, your roll of denim might have imperfections in it and you need to cut pieces out. You can't use it, you've got to throw it away. So, to be realistic, this pushes the cost up because you have to have a certain amount that you throw away. Okay, medium, we throw away 1%. High quality is perfect, you can use the whole lot. The cost of raw materials increases by 3% per quarter. Okay, so if you're running your numbers every quarter, you need to update these. Okay. Number of factories you currently own. At takeover, so when you start this afternoon, you'll own 3 factories. Additional factories can be purchased at a cost of $1.5 million. Okay, we're talking big numbers here. Due to government regulations, however, you can only own and operate a maximum of 5 factories. You're an island nation, you don't have a lot of space, so the government said 5 is the most you can have. You cannot sell a factory once you own it, but you can decommission it. So you can't sell the property off, but you can shut it down if you want to save money. Have we got any questions so far? No? Alright. So each factory can be changed. They don't have to all be a consolidated effort. Factory technology is a good way to influence the number of your level of production, without going to the massive expense of purchasing at more factories. Okay? You can set your factory at 1, 2 or 3, or idle. Idle is when you've decommissioned it and it's not producing anything. To set your factory to idle or decommission it will cost you $10,000, plus your employee redundancy payments, unless you choose to continue paying your employees who aren't producing anything. Alright? To recommission a factory to its previous level of technology, so whatever it was, if you want to bring it back to that, if it was a 3, you want to bring it straight back to a 3 from idle, will cost you $10,000. Plus your employee recruitment fee of 5% of the annual wage. We'll get to what the annual wages are in a moment. Okay, so factory technologies. Let's go through the basic facts. At takeover, you will have 3 new factories and your technology will be set at level 1. What does this mean? Basically, a factory with level 1 technology will have 36 employees. Your employee wage will be $550 a week, and each shift they will produce 53 units. So a shift is per day. Level 2, you don't need as many employees. Great, that's a cost saving. However, your employees need to be higher skilled, so you have to pay them more. But because they're higher skilled and you've got better technology, you can produce more units. So, you can upgrade from one level to the next. Each upgrade costs you $20,000 to upgrade the plant and equipment, and $5,000 to retrain the employee team. Plus, because you need less employees, you've got to make redundancies. So there are redundancy costs. To make 2 staff redundant is going to cost you $10,000 a quarter, roughly. Okay? They're all up there. You can grab all these numbers a bit later if you need them. So, number of employee teams. This is a good way to change your level of production without opening a new factory. That's a massive expense. We said it was 1.5 million, comes in, 1 employee team, level 1 technology, and you've got to build it up from there. So maybe by putting some more employees in your factory, you can produce more units without having to go to the expense of buying a new one. Each factory can support up to 3 employee teams. So we've got 3 factories, 1 team each, 3 teams. We can have 9 without buying a new factory. Maybe that's the way to go. Maybe a new factory is the way to go. You've got to work out the numbers and decide what's the best way for your business to move forward. So, if you hire an additional team, it'll cost you $50,000 to buy new plant and equipment for them to work on. Also, there's a recruitment fee, which is 5% of the annual wage. Remember, we just talked about what the employee wages were, so we can go back. That's per week, number of employees, 52 weeks in the year, gives us a number, 5%. Oh, it's right there. Okay, so that's your recruitment fee. Any questions? Okay. So there are single or double shifts that you can change your employees to. This will influence the number of units produced by each factory. So double shifts are a really good way to increase your production, but they do come at a cost. A double shift is overtime. Therefore, you'll be paying 1.5 times the first shift to keep them on. They're also getting really tired. These employees are getting a bit grumpy now. So, because they are becoming fatigued, they can only produce 85% of the units that they would produce in a normal shift. Okay? So you pay more and get less. But you don't have the expense of purchasing another production line. So you need to weigh all these options up and decide which way is the best way to go. So, let's run through an example and see if we can't figure out a few numbers. So, we'll take a single employee team, 1 factory, working a single shift on level 1 technology. Their production is 53 units per shift. Where do we get that? We got that from the blue tables a few slides back. Okay? This is the one you're taking on. Okay, this is one of your factories that you're taking on. So this is a really good example. That works out to be 265 units a week, 53 units a day, 5 days in a week, or 3,445 units per quarter. So 13 weeks in a quarter, that's where we get that from. That's how many units we're producing in our one factory during the quarter. Total wages for producing these units, how do we figure that out? Pretty simple. We know that for a level 1 technology, we've got 36 employees in our team. We're paying them $550 a week. 13 weeks, we come up with our $257,400. Okay? So our labour cost for producing each unit is $74.72. So we can break it down per unit, and that's a really good way to work out whether or not which option you want to take. How much is it going to cost you per unit? Do we go overtime, etc.? So, at the moment our raw materials are of low quality, which means it's costing us $30 a unit. However, we can only use 98%. So given that we've got to throw 2% away, this actually brings our cost up to about $30.62 per unit. So just because the numbers are printed there beautifully in black and white, doesn't mean you don't have to go and do the maths behind them. So our total variable cost, we add labour, we add our raw materials, we get to $105.34 per unit. So it's up there. The cost of producing this unit is up there. We're obviously going to need to charge quite a bit more to make a profit. So, as we've talked about, this example takes data from your takeover, and you'll note that if all 3 factories are producing 3,445 units, that's a total of 10,335 units for the quarter. Take a look at the top number on your sheet. You'll see we figured out what we're actually capable of producing. Every time you make a change, you're going to need to redo the math to determine what your total output will be. We all good with that? We saw how we got to that number? Great, we've got a long way to go, so let's keep going. Really quickly though, we'll run through another example. If your 3 employee teams are working a double shift and you've increased your technology to level 3, you're now producing 371 units a day. So, maybe I should clarify. This is a single factory. It's now working at maximum capacity. We've hired 2 more teams. We've got the best technology. We can't upgrade this factory anymore. Maximum capacity, single factory. Producing 371 units per day. Okay? Each employee team produces 67 units per shift. With 3 teams, it's total 201 units. Each team produces. Okay, it's 201 units in a single shift. We're happy with that? So we've got the numbers from the blue table before. 67 units, 3 employee teams, 201 units. But we're making them do an overtime shift, so that's where we're getting our extra production from. The double shift is not as productive. So remember, we can only produce 85% in our second shift as what we'd produce in our first shift because our employees are getting really fatigued and tired. Therefore, we take our 201 units, multiply it by 85% to get 170. Add that to our 201, and that's how we get our 371 units per day. So we've really upped production. That's great. That works out to be $18.55 a week. It's pretty simple to work out. Multiply by 5 and 24,115 units per quarter. So a single factory is actually putting out more units than our 3 factories combined was before. We're happy with how we got all those numbers? Yep. Let's have a look at our wages. Our wage bill just got to $2.34 million. So, wages for each team on a single shift, 32 employees per team now because we're on better technology. Therefore, we're paying them more. We're paying them $750 a week. 13 weeks is $312,000. The wages incurred for each team on a double shift, which is paid at overtime, is 1.5 times the standard shift. So 312,000 times by 1.5 for our overtime penalty rate, $468,000. Add those two numbers together, we come up to 780,000. We've got 3 teams in our single factory, which is how we get to our $2.34 million. Divide that by the number of units we're producing in the quarter, and our labour cost alone is $97.04 per unit, which is considerably higher than what it was before. Let's have a look at our raw materials. We're using high quality now, so we're paying $52 a unit, but we can use it all. We don't have to throw any away. So there's no wasted raw materials. Take our raw materials at $52 a unit, add it to our labour costs, and our production cost is now $149.04 per unit. So it's costing us a lot more per unit. What you've got to decide though is, if you need to produce more units to gain more market share, do you go down this route and it costs you more per unit, or do you pay your $1.5 million and open a new factory? I don't know, it's your choice. You guys are the business owners now, you guys are running the show. So this example utilises data which would be seen if the factory was running at maximum capacity using the highest quality goods. So as you can see, the variable cost of producing each unit is much higher than when we looked at minimum capacity, short of being idle, in example 1. You need to decide though, do you really want to pay, do your double employee shifts, which is twice the number of hours, pay overtime, which is 2.5 times the amount, and only get 1.85 times the amount of production? Okay, are we all happy with Ops 1? Oh, we've done Ops 1. We're all happy with Ops 2 so far? Yes? Yes, I know, a lot of numbers, it's all going over your head, but try and stay with me. The final variable to determine for your operations is whether or not you'll have a management system in place at each factory. Quality management improves efficiency and effectiveness, thus reducing waste. Great, we love that. It's going to come at a cost of $30,000 to implement at your factory and train the employees to do it. However, because this is ABW and we don't want to give you all the answers, we're not going to tell you what the benefit of implementing quality management is. So you need to try and work that out once you've implemented it to see if it's worth your investment. All right. Ops is over. Marketing. Little bit more straightforward, hopefully. We have the home market, the other market, and the export market. Okay, we talked about distributing our units across those markets. Now we're going to distribute our marketing funding across those markets. Unfortunately, the ABW program has a limitation, and our local currency is set to Australian dollars and our export currency is set to US. The advantage of that, of course, means you're all competing on a level playing field. So you're not using, say, Fijian dollars versus Australian dollars and that sort of thing. So, for the purposes of this lecture, and all for the purposes of the simulation, we're working in Australian and US dollars. When it comes to your lecture and your written report, we want to bring some of that cultural thing back into it. So we're going to assume that your local currency is Fijian dollars or whatever country you belong to, and that your export currency is Australian dollars. Alright, so that's just the terminology that you're using in your written and your oral reports. Keep it dollar for dollar, keep it simple, okay, but make sure you bring that cultural aspect in. In the simulation, your exchange rate has been set at $1 US buying 95 US cents. You need to take this into account when making your decisions in the export market, okay? Because the export market, the export market is US dollars. So it's actually going to affect your balance sheet or your cash at bank account more because of the exchange rate. I don't believe the exchange rate changes, it stays solid the entire 2 years, but check all of your information to check that. Okay, so let's talk about the marketing. We can clear stock. So at the end of the quarter, we're going to have possibly stock left over. If you've sold out, you could say, great, that's excellent, but how many potential sales have you missed out on? So personally, I'd prefer to have a few units left over in each market. I don't want hundreds of units lying around that I've had to pay to produce, but I can't sell. But I want some, because that means that I've exhausted all of my sales opportunities. If you always come out with no units left, how many thousands, millions of dollars have you lost because you haven't had units to sell to people? All right? But if you get in the situation where you've got hundreds and hundreds of units sitting around, you might want to have a sale and get rid of them. You can't move units between markets once they've been produced. On your sales immediately, it does build up an image over time and a reputation for your product and your business. This is another one of those great decisions that we have to make where we don't actually have any quantitative data to help you decide what to do with it. Okay, this is a trend that you've got to pick up over time. We don't just give you the number and the answer. So generally, teams have found in the past that a steady, consistent campaign is generally the most successful technique to help sell your product. Maybe think about too, is there a market you're really having trouble selling your product in? Maybe you need to put more advertising dollars into that. You know, are you putting $1 million into your home market and selling out every quarter? Maybe that money is better spent elsewhere. These are the decisions that you need to make. You need to consider how many units you're trying to sell in each market and determine how to spend your budget. All right, product enhancement. Basically, we explained this as the quality of packaging that you guys use. Okay, so we can package our products for $3 each in a generic or home brand style, maybe black and gold, you know, cheap tissues at the IGA kind of deal. It's only going to cost us $3 per unit, that's great. But it appeals to a certain type of market. Medium quality, this is kind of middle of the road, you know, your Kleenex and stuff like that. Comes in a more attractive packaging and it's going to cost you $10 per unit. Your high quality, environmental friendly packaging, okay, easily recycled, that sort of thing. Comes with a user manual, just what you need with your box of tissues, and a warranty. Okay, it's going to cost you $15 per unit. What you need to try and decide is, what does the market want? You need to try and pick that, okay? And it's tough, it's hard, I'm not going to lie to you, but it's doable. And some teams have done this really, really well in the past, and others have crashed and burned. Some have crashed and burned after their first decision and made a rapid comeback, okay? There is always an opportunity to make a comeback, all right? Try something. If it doesn't work, try something else. In the early stages, maybe just try adjusting things a little bit and see how the pattern goes. If it's coming towards the end and things are going badly, maybe it's time to take a massive risk, you know? The thing to keep in mind is just because you change it and you expect something to happen, 9 other teams have made a change in the market in which you're competing, so you can't necessarily predict exactly what is going to happen in the market. You might decide to have a massive sale and sell your products off at $200 each to get rid of them, but another team's decided to have a sale and sell them off at $180. So who are they going to buy if they're identical products, same packaging, all of this sort of thing? So you are competing in a volatile market. Okay, sales reps. Your sales reps help you to sell your products in as many locations as possible. So they help to push your product sales along. Sales staff cost you $1,500 per week each, and they're on the road, so we pay them $250 for their motor vehicle. Costs us 5% of their annual salaries in recruitment costs to recruit another salesperson, and wage on costs of 50%. Okay, so more numbers to calculate, and we love that. Redundancy costs, if we get rid of a salesperson, it's going to cost us 2 weeks' wages, plus a week's wage per year of service, in addition to a 10% outplacement cost. Okay, so we've got to go through, calculate all the numbers again. How much is it going to cost me to get rid of this person? Maybe I'm better to keep them. I don't know. Price per unit. This isn't your clearance price, this is your normal selling price. Okay, this is how much you're charging for what stock you've got. Now it says in the books that you can charge anywhere between $200 and $600 per unit. How that works with the opening 125 is beyond me, but we're following the books. Ensure you account for the exchange rate in your export market. Even with the 95-cent exchange rate, I'm still not getting my $200. But anyway, the price per unit will affect how many people are willing to purchase it. Remember, in the computer simulation, you have identical competing products. Okay, what sets them apart is your quality of packaging, how much you're charging, all that sort of thing. How much advertising are you doing? All right, you need to try and work out the concept of supply and demand, and we'll talk about that in a second. The simulation will take into account and compare them to the decisions that are made by your competitors, as we've talked about, to determine how many units you're actually going to sell in each market. Yes?
Is that as well when you discount things?
No. No. So your clearance price can go as low as you like. This is your standard selling price. It might be, if your wage costs are going up 3% per quarter, to keep your profit margin the same, you might want to, tick that along a little bit each time. You might find that if you're always selling out, maybe you're not charging enough, Look, it really is. It's a little bit of experimentation. It's a little bit of research. It's a little bit of playing the market, and it's a bit of luck as well. Okay? So, but if you can really come to terms with this and crunch the numbers and understand, you get, I think it's a 10 pages or 8-page report after you make each decision on what's happened. How many units you've got left, how much money you've got, your loans that you have, your debt to equity ratio, all the different things that you get in this report will help you make the decisions. And your national bank mentors will help you interpret those reports. And ask Matt, he'll be able to help you interpret those reports. It's a challenge, but those of you who really get the hang of it can do some pretty incredible things with this. But that's also why I say it's better if 2 or 3 of you focus on this, because there's so much other stuff to do. And the computer simulation is worth 12.5%. It's 1/8 of the grand champion. Winning this is not the be all and end all, but it's a really cool experiment to get involved in. All right. So, supply and demand. Did I get it right this year, Mr. Hillman? It's right? The graph's right? All right. No, I'm just asking. Okay, supply line indicates the number of units you are willing to produce based on the price you are willing to sell them for. So, as a company, the more we charge, the more we want to produce. As a company, that's the best thing ever. If I can charge $1 million a unit and produce 50 million units, I'll be very happy. Unfortunately, the market doesn't quite see it that way. So their line goes the other way. That's the demand line. Basically, that indicates the number of units the market is willing to purchase based on the price they pay for them. So if they can get it for free, they'll have as many as you can give away. If you're selling them at $1 million a unit, most people aren't going to buy it. Does that make sense how that concept works? So your idea is to try and find that equilibrium point where the supply and demand meet. Okay, and that's really determining the number of units that your factories are producing and the price you're charging in the market. So remember we talked about trying not to sell out but only have a few left? That's finding that equilibrium balance. Now it's unlikely that your supply and demand lines will actually be linear as per our lovely graph. And your market will have quite a different equilibrium, which will change every quarter depending on what all the teams are doing. But this is the idea, to try and get that sales equal production thing down pat. All right. Any questions about the marketing, charging for products, that sort of thing? No? All right. Everyone with me so far? I know it's a bit dry. Yep. Finance. Okay. Debentures are a loan which are taken out from investors, and they'll attract interest payable at 7%. So this is instead of taking out a loan from the bank, you take it out from your investors. It's really important to note that the number you put in this box is the balance of your debentures. Okay? So if you want to take out a $100,000 debenture, you put $100,000 in the box. That's quite straightforward and simple. If you don't want to pay that back the next quarter, you still have to put $100,000 in the box. If you put zero, because it's a balance, it will pay all the money back when maybe you didn't want to. Are we clear on that? This is quite a different concept to how all the other boxes work, so be careful with this one. So, if you were taking out $100,000 in the first one, that's great. In the next quarter you want to pay back $25,000, you put $75,000 in the box. If you run out of cash during a quarter, your cash at bank account will go into overdraft. And I'm fairly confident that you all start with a very hefty overdraft. So the banks charge you 10% on your overdraft. So you may want to get rid of that and change to a debenture because it's a cheaper way to finance. But again, that's your call, that's your decision. And the bank overdraft will happen automatically. When you run out of money, it'll start coming on as a negative amount as an overdraft. All right? Okay. For those of you rich companies that have a lot of surplus cash lying around, not at the start, you all start equally, but maybe in a couple of quarters, if you pay it all off and you've got millions sitting in the bank you don't know what to do with, maybe invest in a term deposit. Okay, so this is another way you can make a bit of money and help your share price out. Term deposits are an excellent way to make money on surplus amounts of money sitting in your cash at bank account. Each quarter you have the opportunity to start a new term deposit. Once you've allocated how much and the period you wish to invest for, this money will be unavailable. If you put $1 million in a term deposit for 4 quarters, you will not get that $1 million back until the end of the 4th quarter. It's gone. You cannot have it back. When it comes back though, it will come back with 6% interest on it, so you've made some money. Great. Okay, term deposits, good way to increase your cash at bank account or, push up your share price if you've got surplus cash. If you don't think it's going to be surplus because you're going to build a factory in a quarter's time, maybe don't invest it. Okay, at takeover your company will have 1 million shares. They're trading at $5 each. Even playing field. It is a bit evil too. As a way to raise capital, you can increase the number of shares on the market. You can't buy them back. So once you've increased it, you can't decrease it. If you increase your shares too much, you'll water down your share price. If you put another 1 million shares on the market and nothing else changes, your share price will probably drop to $2.50 as a very straightforward linear example. The idea of the simulation is to have the best share price. But if you put shares out on the market because it's a share offer or you're increasing the number of shares, the people who buy those shares, that money comes back to you. So it's a good way to raise capital as well. So it's a bit of a game to play there. All right, dividends. I really want to highlight this. Your dividends are cents per share. Okay, so 1 million shares. All right, put a 1 in the box. 1 cent per share times $1 million. Is that $10,000? All right, so it will eat into your capital pretty quickly. If you start to put, 100 cents per share, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Paying dividends regularly, though, is a good way to increase and maintain a high share price. Okay, investors love it because they get something back. Not only is their share price going up and their capital is becoming worth more, they're also getting money in their pocket in the meantime. So dividends are a good thing. Small regular dividends are welcomed because you're making the shareholders believe that they're sustainable. If you pay irregular dividends, high dividend, low dividend, jump all over the place, shareholders will tend to think your company is a bit more volatile, and so your share price will fluctuate accordingly. Okay? Steady increases generally indicate a safer investment. Up and down is a risky investment. You'll attract a different kind of investor and your share price will fluctuate a lot more. Employee bonuses. They're an excellent way to increase morale and therefore keep your workforce happy. Happy workforce, better production. This is another one of these lovely numbers which we cannot put a quantitative value on. Okay? The percentage is based on your after-tax profits from the previous quarter. So when you get your report after you've made your first decision with all the information, you'll have an after-tax profit for the quarter. Okay? And whatever percentage you put on your next decision will be based off that number. Okay? Somewhere the number comes from the report you get. Somewhere on that report. It's just a matter of going through it and finding it and working it out. Alright. Bear in mind that similar to dividends, paying bonuses to your employees, you're reducing the amount of capital. So if you pay a dividend or you pay a bonus, that's money you're putting out. What are you getting back in return? You can't use that money to then turn around and put it towards production. It's gone. But what's the benefit? Employee bonus, happy employee, more productive, getting a few more units maybe. Or maybe when they're working their double time shifts, their production's a little bit better than 85%. Who knows? We're not actually told how that works. Okay. Community support. It's highly regarded and can, under the correct circumstances, improve your company's share price. Shareholders are aware of how businesses give back to the community which surrounds them, and therefore they may find that, community grants and that sort of thing are valuable, and it may influence their decision whether or not to invest in your company. There are cutthroat investors out there who just don't care. It's all about them and it's all about the money. But then you've got your mum and dad investors who they want to invest in a stable company, good share price, slowly increasing, but they're also environmentally conscious. So they do the research into your company. All right? So think about this. It's expressed in a dollar amount per quarter for the simulation. And I should stress that in your company report, in your oral report, if you're talking about community stuff, you can talk about maybe other things that your company's doing for the community. Okay, not just we gave money to this charity. We donated our employees' time and we did this and we did that and we're looking after the environment and rah, rah, rah. Okay, remember when your oral and your written report, it's a load of fluff. You've got to sell it to the investors, all right? But in the simulation, everything comes down to a dollar value. Okay, management salaries, and we touched on this very briefly. For a company to run, there has to be a good management structure. If your salaries are too low, you may cause chaos. If you cut the CEO's salary in half, he probably can't be bothered. He won't look after his department managers, he won't look after the employees, and the whole thing will fall to bits. You will elect a CEO. You as the CEO in your team might say, personally, I'm quite happy to take a pay cut. This isn't the CEO in the simulation. The CEO in the simulation wants his $200,000 plus. Okay, just keep that in mind. But if you increase their salary too much, is there actually a benefit to it? Maybe it's another one of these things where you want to increase it incrementally at 2 or 3 or 5% or whatever you come up with, or maybe you want to leave it the same. But there's got to be some sort of incentive to keep going. Okay, so the CEO is a single salary. There's one CEO. The other 3 departments are made up of 3 department managers. So that salary is split between 3 people. So that $150,000 is $50,000 per manager. Okay? Clear on that? It's a total for the group of 3. Hint, maybe you should consider a percentage increase per quarter or annum. All right. The environmental decision. The environmental decision is something you'll be faced with at some stage, whether it's in quarter 1, quarter 2, or it may come around every quarter. Think carefully about the environmental decision. Sometimes it will cost you to fix an environmental impact that your company has had, and that will cost you and leave you less money. But by saving your reputation, are you saving sales, are you keeping your share price up, that sort of thing? Or is the cost too great, you don't worry about it, you move on, pretend it never happened, everyone finds out and your share price plummets. What's the go? You need to decide. Not every environmental decision will have a financial impact. Okay? You may simply be asked whether or not you want to attend something, or, write letters. It doesn't actually cost you anything. Would it cost you anything to do it, to try? Will that impact your future ability to make these decisions? You need to decide. All right. Finally, winning the simulation. The winning company will be the business that has consistently achieved the highest share price for the duration of the program, that is 8 quarters. This means that the company which has been able to keep their share price consistently increasing across the 8 quarters can easily win over a team whose share price has simply skyrocketed from nothing to the highest price by quarter 8. Okay, it's about consistency. The computer takes this into account. The later quarters are higher weighted, okay, but it's really difficult to pick which team will win. We also, after you make decision 8, will not give you any information back because that would spoil it. Alright, so you'll find out at the dinner who wins. Another great reason to attend. That's all from me. That's a lot of information. I know that. This presentation will be available on G Drive. Yes. If you grab your programs, you'll see that throughout the week there are 8 decisions which need to be made. They need to be made on time. Okay, there is a time that they're due. The first one is due this afternoon. So, take an opportunity to make a few small changes, see how it goes, get your reports back, take them home for the weekend and give it some serious consideration. With them being due, if you miss the due time, what happens? You are stuck with your previous decision. Okay? So whatever you did, if it goes really badly and you don't get your next decision in on time, you're stuck with your really bad decision again. Another question? No? Yes? At the front?
So how many decisions will we get to make?
8.
Also 1 each?
1 each quarter, yes. I believe, is it 1 on Friday, couple on Tuesday, and then 3 on Thursday, something like that? It's in the little A5 program that you've got. It's about 4 or 5 or 6 pages long. It's got all of your due times. Your due times are really important. Sorry? Oh, from this morning. Okay, so the penalties will go towards your score. So if, for example, you're not returning things like equipment that's been loaned to you, if it's not returned, or it's, you're painting tarpaulins and paintbrushes and stuff and they come back full of paint and we can't use them again, those penalties will go towards things like teamwork and it'll start to reduce your score. Does that make sense? So if it's something like your oral presentation, I think you've got 8 minutes. If you run over time because you haven't got everything covered in the 8 minutes, penalties will come off your oral presentation. So you'll be penalised in the correct category. Yep. Anything else? No? Guys, I wish you a lot of luck with this. Use your National Bank mentors. Ask Matt. That's what they're here for. They're here to guide you through this process. All right?
Year 11, sorry Markus, just while we're talking about the marketing strategies and making sure that they're neat, tidy and clean, E-Block, which is the bottom part of the science labs, has just been freshly painted. So that means E-Block this year is completely out of bounds in terms of advertising. So you're not allowed to stick anything up there. Doesn't matter if it's a blue tag, it especially can't be with sticky tape. But E-Block is completely out of bounds. Is that understood? So nothing is to be put up down here at this end. So like on the walls.
Or you will be penalised.
No sticky tape ever. Is that understood?
All right. Look, guys, thanks very much for your time this morning. I know it's a lot of information. I really wish you the best of luck with this. All right. Unfortunately, I can't be here this week to help you out, but yeah. No worries.